business when you need it the most. It is my pleasure to welcome Ryan Hoey to have the floor for the first.
I'll wait for you to sit back down to start the timer. Thank you, Mr. President. It's a pleasure to be speaking in this debate. As an architect of our great debate series, I'm glad to finally be able to contribute to one. Given the current political impasse, it's also great to see this chamber actually being used for debate and discussion. Indeed, if the current vacuum is not filled by the end of this week, I would suggest that the Litterific is invited to form the provisional government of Northern Ireland. Before I begin, as is customary for the first speaker at these sorts of things, I'd like to say a few words of thanks to our guest speakers, or introduce them. On my side of the debate, we have two former MEPs, Diane Dodds, who served in the executive during the most difficult periods of the COVID pandemic. Jim Allister, I've always admired for his oratory and clarity of thought, and I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say this evening. And we also have Robbie Butler, who you may not know took part in the Litterific's karaoke fundraiser last year and gave us a beautiful rendition of Mr. Blue Sky. Then on the opposition, we have Kate Nicholl, who I think we can all agree, regardless of our politics, was a fantastic Lord Mayor of Belfast. Emma DeSouza, who I debated alongside in Dublin only a month ago, and let's hope that this debate goes a bit better for my side than that one did. And last but certainly by no means least, Matthew O'Toole, who by now must hold the record for the most speeches given by an elected official to the Litterific. So turning to the motion, this House believes the protocol has negatively impacted Northern Ireland. I'm sure the opposition will argue, as I've heard Matthew make this point before, the Union's concerns around consent should basically be dismissed because Northern Ireland didn't consent to Brexit. I'm sure they'll also argue, and indeed Emma tweeted as much the other day, that the protocol has protected us from the worst excesses of Brexit. Taking these points in turn, being part of the United Kingdom means some decisions, such as membership of international bodies, will be taken on a UK-wide basis. The EU referendum of 2016 was a national referendum, and the United Kingdom as a whole voted to leave. That decision on a reserved matter had to be respected, but we should of course have tried to implement a settlement that all sections of the community could live with. What we've ended up with the protocol is a protocol that not a single unionist representative can support. And this is a problem because Northern Ireland operates on the principle of parallel consent. To give an analogy for my nationalist-leaning friends, if we ever voted to leave the UK, we would have to find a settlement that addressed some of the losing side's concerns. But that couldn't involve the parts that voted Remain basically remaining. Referendum results, by their very nature, cannot have parallel consent, but the ultimate settlement should strive to achieve the maximum possible acceptance from both communities in Northern Ireland. The DUP are receiving a lot of criticism for their refusal to establish an executive until the protocol is addressed. However, indeed there are some within unionism who disagree with that approach. However, if the same level of checks and controls that now exist down the Irish Sea were applied to the border with the Republic, Sinn Féin would undoubtedly have taken a similar course of action. In January 2020, I wrote a piece arguing that the implementation of the protocol should be as light touch as possible. I said at the time that negotiations on the next stage of the Brexit process were vitally important in determining how the protocol would operate in practice, and urged the then newly established executive to be a powerful voice for protecting East-West trade, pointing out that Northern Ireland trades more with the rest of the UK than with the Republic of Ireland, the European Union and the rest of the world put together. When the EU signed up to the protocol, they de facto, although not officially, became core guarantors of the Belfast Agreement. How they approached its implementation would determine whether we could maintain the delicate balance between north-south and east-west so essential to its success. However, the EU's singular focus on protecting their single market and the calls from some parties for the rigorous implementation of the protocol have prevented such a settlement from being reached. That is not to say that the UK government is blameless From the 2017 joint report onwards, the government accepted a one-sided interpretation of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, that it prevented a border on the island of Ireland, but allowed one down the Irish Sea. This was always an odd interpretation when the Belfast Agreement explicitly reaffirms an international border on the island unless and until there is a majority to change it. Now, I accept that there will always be a UK-EU treaty relationship to manage our unique circumstances. But we need to get to a situation where the practical and constitutional concerns are addressed and find more flexible and ultimately more durable arrangements that can command support from all sections of the community. This means continuing to protect the integrity of the EU single market, but also fully respecting Northern Ireland's place in the UK customs territory and internal market. Trade should be differentiated by making it the responsibility of the trader to declare the final destination of their goods, with steep penalties for those found to have misled the authorities. The original intention of the protocol, or supposed intention of the protocol, as described in its preamble, is to affirm and protect the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. However, it is the protocol itself that is now a major roadblock to the re-establishment of these institutions, which are the cornerstone of that agreement. The opposition may want to plough on with a newfound spirit of majoritarianism, but that simply won't work. Rather than goading opponents of the protocol, we need a recognition of the economic problems caused by its overzealous implementation and a consciousness of why it so deeply stirs passions of unionists, remainers and leavers alike. The protocol is negatively impacting Northern Ireland. I commend the motion to the House.